Today is the fourth day of the days of the unleavened bread. Since it's fourth day, then it makes it the center or we are in the middle of this day. And it's quite interesting, brethren, because did you know that about 80% of the world's population actually eats bread? Did you know that? About 80% of the world's population eats bread. Now, in the Philippines, you might think that we only eat rice and because it's a staple food. But did you know that 88% of Filipinos eat bread at least once a day? That's quite interesting. And so this tells you, brethren, because God exactly knew what He is doing. He is using the most common type of food as a way for us to learn the meaning of this day. The days of unleavened bread. And because of this, brethren, because it's quite, not really surprising, but pleasantly surprised because I intended to have 5 points today for this message, but I need to reduce it because it's kind of lengthy. And so, I only have 4. And it's quite incidental because today is the 4th day of the feast. So, God might be saying that, oh Josh, just make it 4 so that people would, the brethren would be more focused on your points. So, this time, brethren, I would like to talk about the 4 symbols of the unleavened bread. Alright? The 4 symbolisms of the days of unleavened bread. And I want to take these symbolisms and expound them so that we would have a better understanding of what these days really picture. And I can tell you, brethren, that after this message, you would have a deeper understanding of what the feast is all about. And I hope that you would also appreciate the points that I will give you. All right? So, the first point, the first symbolism I want to share with you is, of course, the yeast or the leaven. Yeast or leaven. And as we know, the most common leavening agent that was used even now and in the ancient time is yeast. And because of this, the Bible tells us, we don't have to go there, but you just have to write it down because we have been reading these Bible verses in the past few weeks. In Exodus 12 and Exodus 13, we read about the instruction about how to keep the days of unleavened bread. So basically, there are 3 things that we need to do according to Exodus 12 and Exodus 13. There are 3 things that we need to do. Number 1 is to remove leaven in your dwelling place. Okay? So that's the first one. You have to remove the leaven in your dwelling place. And then number 2, we are prohibited to eat leavening food or products with leavening. So, it doesn't mean that, I just remove everything in my house and then when you go out of your house, you eat leavening products. You eat hamburger, you eat fried chicken with breadings, you eat crackers, the junk food. Actually, there's a lot of things that you just don't know. There's a lot of yeast and leavening products because aside from yeast, we also have baking soda, baking powder. So those things are not permitted to be eaten. So it doesn't mean that my house is free of leavening, so I will just go outside and eat pandesal. That's not how it works. So that is the second instruction. And the third is, in addition of not eating leavening, you have to eat unleavened bread. Alright? So those are the 3 basic things that you could read from Exodus 12 and verse 13. Now, what is so special about leavening? What is so special about yeast? Why does God focus on leaven? Why didn't He just focus on other things? Maybe perhaps He could have used the water. Of course, we will die if we don't drink water for 7 days. So perhaps other food, maybe meat. We don't eat meat, we don't eat fish for 7 days. But why does God choose yeast? Well, it is very interesting because if you look into the property of yeast, you will learn a lot of analogies of how this yeast actually pictures sin. Okay? So the yeast could actually, which actually I would say perfectly represents sin. All right? So in Galatians 5 verse 9, it tells you a little bit of what yeast can do in a bread. In Galatians 5 verse 9, it says, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. So even just a little leaven, it could already leaven the whole lump. And because of that, brethren, let me give you 3 properties of yeast that actually represent sin. Okay? 3 properties of yeast that actually represent sin. Number 1, yeast is difficult to remove. Yeast is difficult to remove. If you are a baker, you probably already know that once you put the yeast on the dough, it's very difficult to remove. Especially if you have already mixed it out. Okay? It's so very difficult. So once it's there, you let it sit there a few seconds, a few minutes, you look at the dough, there's nothing happening. There's some you don't see any change. You don't see anything that's going on there. But deep inside, the yeast has already been doing its thing. All right? So just like yeast, it's very difficult to remove. And what else, brethren? Actually, yeast is a microscopic fungus or fungi. It is microscopic, meaning you cannot see it. Actually, everywhere, especially even here in our room, there is yeast all around us. You just don't see it. We might have leavened our house. We have removed leaven, but actually, these things or yeast is present everywhere. So, just like in Romans 7, verse 14 to 15, the Apostle Paul talks about how difficult it is to remove sin in our lives. Now, all of us could relate to his struggle. He says in Romans 7:14, verse 15, for we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. For what I am doing, I do not understand. For what I will to do, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. So, even the Apostle Paul confirms that sin is difficult to overcome. Gusto niya gawin to. Alam niya, it's the right thing to do. And yet, he find it very hard to overcome. Perhaps you could relate to that. There's a certain sin in your life that's just so difficult to overcome. So that is how yeast also works. It's so difficult to remove. And what else? Yeast corrupts. That's another property of yeast. Yeast corrupts. Although we commonly use yeast as a leavening product, we add it in our bread. But actually, yeast, don't forget, yeast is still a type of fungus. All right, that contribute to the spoilage of food. That's why when you put the bread there and just give it a few days, you would soon see mold. It starts to rot with mold. And you might see it as greenish or grayish. So you should avoid eating that bread because it's going to upset your stomach. So yeast, just like yeast that corrupts, sin also corrupts. Let's go to James 1 verse 15. James 1:15, it says, then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. That is corruption. We will die because of sin. Just like how yeast corrupts food, how it spoils food in our house, in our kitchen. And number 3, yeast pops up. Yeast pops up. Now, for you to better understand how yeast work, think about it this way. How does yeast adds How does yeast pops up bread? Well, this is what we call the process of fermentation. Okay? Yeast, as a fungi, would eat the sugar inside the dough. And in the process of eating that sugar, they produce carbon dioxide gas. Okay? And if you have seen dough, it is enclosed. Okay? It is enclosed, and because it is enclosed, it doesn't have holes. The air is trapped so that the air will, like a balloon, it will inflate the bread. Sometimes, yeast can actually increase the size of the dough for about 5 times of its original size. That's how, I would say, effective yeast is in puffing up the bread. Now, look at this, brethren. The Bible actually tells us different ways how sin could puff us up. Okay? I have 3 points here, sub-points. Number 1 is that we are puffed up by pride. We are puffed up by pride. 1 Corinthians 8 verse 1 tells us, now concerning things, 1 Corinthians 8:1, it says, now concerning things offered to idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. Now, you need to be very careful when it comes to attaining knowledge, that it doesn't puff you up, that it doesn't add to your pride. Because just like yeast, pride is a form of sin that could puff you up. The second one, how does yeast puff us? 1 Corinthians 4 verse 6, it says, now these things, brethren, I have figuratively transferred to myself and Apollos for your sakes, that you may learn in us not to think beyond what is written, that none of you may be puffed up on behalf of one against the other. So, this is the second way that yeast puffs us up. We are puffed up by following leaders. By following leaders. Actually, in the Corinthian church, there are people who likes who likes Paul, and then some likes another teacher, some likes this leader. And so because of this, because they have favoritism, they become puffed up because, oh, my leader, this my chosen leader, my favorite one is better than you, he speaks more, he is more knowledgeable, he's wiser. So people become puffed up based on the people they follow. And the third one, we are puffed up, this is very important, because this is very tricky. We are puffed up by false humility. We are puffed up by false humility. We read in Colossians 2 verse 18. Colossians 2 verse 18. Let no one cheat you of your reward, taking delight in false humility and worship of angels, including to those things which he has not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. So you could see here, brethren, that yeast could puff us up by having false humility. Sometimes, brethren, why do we have false humility? It is a subtle form of seeking attention or praise from others. We may downplay our achievements or our virtues in attempt to elicit compliments or admiration. Have you experienced that, brethren? Oh, ang galing-galing mo naman. Ay, hindi, tsamba lang yun. Di ba? Have you tried that? That is actually false humility. Oh, ang galing mo kanina sa basketball ah. Ay, tsamba lang yun. Pagtira ko, tsamba lang yun. Hindi pa nga ako nag-practice eh. Di ba? So, that is actually kind of false humility. And by doing so, brethren, you are actually just seeking praise. When someone compliments you or someone praises you, just simply say, thank you. That's for the glory of God. That's it. You don't have to have false humility. Ay, hindi naman. So you can do better than that. So those are some of the 11 things that we need to overcome in our lives. So I hope that you are now seeing more understanding of the days of unleavened bread just in this first point. So that is my first point, brethren. The first symbol, the symbol of yeast. And number 2, this is very important. This is something that we need to understand. So I need your full attention because I need your full focus because this is kind of deep. Okay? This is kind of deep point. This is, number 2, the symbol is leaven of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herodians. Now, some people, most of us are familiar with the leaven of Pharisees and Sadducees. We have heard about that. But I would like to include the Herodians. Okay? Because Yahshua actually included them in his list. Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herodians. So, is it really true, Josh, that they have this kind of leaven? Of course. Let's go to Matthew 16, verse 6. Let's go there, brethren. Matthew 6, verse 6. Says here, 16 verse 6, 16 verse 6. Okay, here. Then Yahshua said to them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay, so confirm. There's some kind of leaven that the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, let's go to Mark 8:15. Mark 8:15. Okay, Mark 8:15. Then he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. So, we confirm that these leavens, or this type of leaven, actually existed. Now, let's go one by one. Who are these people? So that we would better understand my points later. Okay? So, the Pharisees, let me just see my notes here. So I get it right. So let's talk about the Sadducees. The Sadducees were mainly comprised of aristocrats, priests, and members of the upper class. Now, this is what they teach. They primarily adhere to the written Torah. Okay? So the first 5 books of the Old Testament, they believe in that. But, notice, the Sadducees rejected the belief in the resurrection of the dead, the existence of angels, and the concept of an afterlife. Now, when I read this, it just blows my mind because how could you miss these very important points? This important doctrine? If you read the Old Testament, you would read about the resurrection. I don't know about the Sadducees, but that's what they believe. And then, they focus on the temple cult and the rituals of sacrifice. And the Sadducees were generally more accommodating to Roman rule and sought to maintain political stability. So those are the Sadducees. Then, next group is the Pharisee. The Pharisees were a more diverse group consisting of teachers, scholars, and common people. Now, this is where they differ from the Sadducees. The Pharisees upheld both the written Torah and they also have oral traditions. So that is the difference sa Sadducees. The Pharisees added oral traditions to the teaching of the Torah. And then, the Pharisees emphasized a strict adherence to religious laws and customs. And, of course, they believe, unlike the Sadducees, they believe in the resurrection of the dead, the existence of angels, and the concept of the afterlife. And here's another difference. The Pharisees are critical of Roman influence because they want to preserve the Jewish identity. So that's the difference. And let's go to the third one, the Herodians, or the Herodians, yes. The Herodians were a political faction or group in the time of Yahshua mentioned in the New Testament. They weren't so concerned about religious matters, but instead, they are more concerned about the political matters in Judea. So that's their main focus. So they don't care about it. They don't care much of religion, but they care more about political stability. Now, numerous scholars believe that the Herodians viewed Herod as a kind of Messiah, someone who would rescue the Jewish territory by aligning it with the Roman Empire, thus bringing prosperity and favor to the people. Now, notice this. The Pharisees, Sadducees, Herodians don't usually agree with each other. In fact, they always find themselves at odds with each other. But do you know what? Do you know the one thing that they all agree with? It is to eliminate Yeshua. So all of these people, they are against they have their own belief, they have their own customs. But when it comes to Yeshua, they all agree that they need to remove Yeshua. Because why? Because Yeshua becomes a threat to their hold of power to the people. Because Yeshua is growing influence, and then they see him as a threat. So that's why, if you're going to look into the Gospels, you would see that the many times they would like to test Yeshua and entrap him and ultimately they were able to have him crucified. So that's the difference, and those are that's the background of these three groups of people. Now, right? So we already have that. In the Bible, there are two things that Yeshua identified as the leaven of these people. The first one is their doctrine. And the number two, it's their hypocrisy. Now, let's go to this doctrine. What is this all about? Let's go to Mark 7:5-9. Mark 7:5 verses 5-9. Sorry. Mark 7:5-9 says, "Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, 'Why do your disciples not walk according to what? According to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands?'" So, what did Yeshua break here? What did Yeshua break here? Did he break God's commands? God's law? No. He broke the tradition of the elders. And then, that's the oral law. That's what I'm referring to earlier. He answered and said to them, "Well did Isaiah prophesy of the hypocrites, as it is written, 'These people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, the washing of pitchers and cups, and many other such things you do.' He said to them, 'All too well you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your tradition.'" So, can you see that, brethren? This is the doctrine of the Pharisees. This is the leaven that they have in their lives. They hold the doctrine that is contrary to the Word of God. Now, this is very important. I want you to listen carefully. The Pharisees and the scribes hold the highest religious authority in the land. And this is confirmed by Yeshua himself. Let's go there, brethren. Matthew 23, verse 1-3. This is where I want you to begin listening carefully. When Yeshua spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat." Verse 3, "Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do." Now, before you understand, before we proceed, brethren, we need to have a deep understanding of what this Moses seat is all about. What is this Moses seat is telling here? Well, brethren, if you have the Moses seat is actually a representation of the rabbinical authority. Okay? This is the rabbinical authority. So, Yeshua was saying that these people assume that they sit at Moses' seat. Okay? So, I read some commentaries here about Moses' seat. The Jews, the rabbinical Jews actually sees the Moses seat as the ultimate authority of the religion. And they see this Moses seat in the same way they see the Pope for the Catholics. You see that? So, when Yeshua was saying that they are in the Moses seat, they are sitting in Moses seat, Yeshua is saying that they are using this perceive authority to control the people. Okay? It is like when the Pharisees say something, it is going to be correct, always correct, diba? Just like how they see the Pope. Oh, the Pope said this, so that's correct. Oh, the Pope, this is the decision of the Pope, this is his judgment, so let's follow that. When you adhere to the Pharisees, if you accept their authority, whatever they say, you have to follow. And because of that, brethren, even though they are wrong in their interpretation, but because you accept their authority, you have to submit to their judgment. Actually, I forgot that there was this case in the past. There was this rabbi who was telling the Pharisees, the scribes, that there was something wrong in their doctrine, but because that rabbi is not part of Moses' seat, he have to admit he's wrong simply because they said it is correct. So that's how they see the people who sit in this what is called the Moses seat. Now, look at this, brethren. In verse 3, I want you to focus here. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works. For they say and do not do. Now, this creates a huge problem. You know why? You know why, brethren? Because we just knew that the Pharisees have their own oral tradition. And if you are going to read the Gospels, the entire Gospels, you would find something good that is written about the Pharisees. In fact, Yeshua find himself always at odds against his people. Now, why would Yeshua say that whatever they tell you, you observe? Just don't do what they are doing according to their works. If you are going to read the rest of Matthew 23, you would see how Yeshua condemned and lambasted these people. And now, you see here in Matthew 23 verse 3 that whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do. So this creates a big problem. So how do we reconcile this, brethren? It has to do with the copying of manuscript. Okay? It has to do with copying of the manuscript. According to Shem Tov's Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, this is actually the oldest extant or most complete Hebrew version of the Gospel of Matthew. This is actually going to prove to you that the Gospel of Matthew was written originally in Hebrew and not in Greek. And according to this Shem Tov's Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, this verse should have been translated as, therefore, I will just read verse 2 first. The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever he tell you to observe, that observe and do. It should not be whatever they tell you to observe. Because when he says, therefore, whatever they, he was saying that whatever the Pharisees would tell you, do it. But when you change that to he, therefore, whatever he tell you to observe, that is referring to Moses. Okay? So, that is how it should be written here. So, that solved the problem. Now, you might say, alright, that's good to know, Josh. Very good. Very nice to know. But, we don't have Pharisees and Sadducees here trying to influence us. It's long gone. Those times are long gone. We don't have that kind of problem right now. But, brethren, we can commit the same mistake these people are committing. How? You might ask, how? Well, brethren, this is it. This is how. When it comes to writing or preparing doctrines, brethren, we don't base them in what people say. Okay? We cannot say that, we keep the Sabbath because this has been the tradition of our church for a very long time. We don't eat pork, we don't eat seafood, we don't eat seafood because this has been what is taught to us. We don't do that, brethren. We actually observe the Sabbath because it is written in the Bible. And yet, what is happening right now, brethren? You look at some of the churches of God right now. we keep the Jewish calendar because Matthew 23 verse 3 says, oh, they sit in Moses' seat, so we have to follow them. We keep the calendar because this has been what the church, the old church has taught us. This is what Mr. Armstrong has taught in the past. So this is what we will do. So brethren, that is what we call the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Their doctrine. We are, we try to say na, oh, this is how we do it in the past, so this is how we are going today. We don't need to rock the boat. It's good naman. Okay ka naman, di ba? Okay ako. So, there's no need to change. There's no need to study and prove all things because we have received this teaching from these people, this person, this leader, this pastor. So, actually, that is the doctrine. That is the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. So, I hope that you have better understanding of this verse, brethren. So, I want you, if you have your Bible, crash out the word they should be he. So, next is, the next leaven that Yeshua mentioned is the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Let's read here. Let's read here in Luke 12 verse 1. Luke 12 verse 1. Right, just to backtrack a little bit. So we could see here that leaven does not only represent sin, but it could also represent false teachings and doctrines. Okay? So let's go to Luke 12 verse 1. In the meantime, when an innumerable multitude of people had gathered together so that they trampled one another, he began to say to his disciples, first of all, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. And this also include the Herodians. Let's have a quick read here, Matthew 22:15. Just to give you a proof that the Herodians are also hypocrites. Matthew 22 verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. And they said to him their disciples, with who? With the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth, nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Now look at this question. This has nothing to do with religion. This is actually what the Herodians are more concerned about, the political atmosphere that place. He says, verse 17, tell us therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Okay? So, what did Yeshua call them, including the Herodians? Verse 18, but Yeshua perceived their wickedness. Now, I want you to take note of that word wickedness because that is going to be also part of my point later. So, what did Yeshua perceive? It's their wickedness and said, why do you test me, you hypocrites? So, you could see here, we have confirmed that the Herodians are also hypocrites. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to Matthew 23. Okay, so if you're going to read the rest of Matthew 23, you're going to read the many times that Yeshua called these people as hypocrites. Now, I tried to count them all, and it is 7. 7 times he called him, Yeshua called them hypocrites. In verse 13, but woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. 14, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. 15, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. And then verse 23, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. And verse 25, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Verse 27, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! I want you to take note of how Yeshua described these people. Now, it is so dangerous to belong to this category. Look, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, ang ganda-ganda sa labas, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. That's why, brethren, when you go back to Matthew 23, what was the first thing that he said? Beware, or Matthew 22, he says, beware of the leaven, which of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Why? Why beware? Because it's very dangerous. You see, brethren, how does Yeshua describe the hypocrisy of these people? If you go back to verse 3, therefore, whatever he tells you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad, enlarge the borders of their garments. They love the best places at feasts, the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. So you could see here, hypocrisy is about gaining the praise of people rather than the praise of God. They would rather get the reward from men rather from God. They would rather please men rather than our Heavenly Father. So, this is very important, brethren, because you know why? Hypocrisy is very difficult to detect. And because hypocrite people are so good at deceiving others, in the process, they have also deceived themselves. So they cannot detect hypocrisy in their lives. That's why Yeshua was saying, beware, beware, be aware of hypocrisy in your life. Now, for us to better understand or better examine ourselves, if we have hypocrisy in our lives, let me just give you some questions here. I want you to honestly answer these questions in your mind, okay? Number 1, do I hold myself to the same moral standards that I expect from others? Do I have double standards in my life? Number 2, am I genuinely portraying myself as I am? Or am I projecting a false image to others? Sa harap ng ibang tao, ang bait. Pero pag sa bahay, di mo malaman kung anong ginagawa. Diba? Mabait lang sa ibang tao, pero with his own family, masama yung ugali. Do I tend to criticize or condemn others for behaviors that I myself engage in? Am I consistent in following moral principles? Or do I conveniently ignore some when it suits me? Are my words and actions aligned? Or do I often say one thing and do another? Oh, ito yung usapan natin na gagawin natin to, tapos you will not do it. Do I believe I am morally superior to others? And does this belief affect how I treat them? Do you feel like, oh, I'm better than this person? I admit I'm not that good, I'm not that righteous. Pero if you compare me with that person, lamang naman ako. Diba? Do we have that kind of attitude, brethren? Do I engage in religious practices genuinely out of faith, or am I just going through the motions for appearance's sake? Ang galing-galing mag-preach, ang galing-galing kumanta ng hymnal, ang galing mag-special music, ang galing mag-serve na other people. And yet, deep inside, brethren, it's all about a show. Pakitang tao lang. Do I acknowledge and address my faults and mistakes? Or do I try to cover them up? Instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry if I've done this, but instead of saying that, actually, nagawa ko lang yun kasi ginawa mo to eh. Diba? Instead na, kasalanan mo, naging kasalanan pa ng iba. Is that how it happens, brethren? How about this one? Very important. Is my online persona an accurate reflection of who I am in real life? Or am I projecting a false image for others to see? Araw-araw, you post Bible verses. Now, that is very good. But you share messages, you share godly things in your social media. And yet, when it comes to real life, you don't apply those things. So those are hypocritical attitude that we need to remove in our lives. And that is exactly what this day is all about. The Feast of Unleavened Bread. We need to actively identify these things that need to remove. That's why, brethren, if you notice, I just want to go back to the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. These three groups of people actually represent three types of people who have leaven in their lives. How? Let me show you. The Pharisees are the religious ones. They are the ultra-religious people. They strictly follow the law. They are in doing the rituals, going through the flow, and yet they don't change their behavior inside. So those are the ultra-religious people. They don't still there's still leaven in their lives. The second one, the Sadducees. They represent who? They represent the people who simply have the appearance of religion. They are the people that they are part of the priestly group of people. They have they are part of the temple service, and yet they don't let their faith to grow, and they don't let their knowledge to grow. It's simply about one foot in the church and then one foot into the world. And the worst of all are the Herodians. They represent the people who simply live their life for themselves. They simply live for the secular ambitions. They want to get rich. They want to buy the next beautiful, the next iPhone. They simply want to advance their careers. All these things, all just about the physical things. And what's common about these people, brethren? They have leaven in their lives. They don't remove it. That's why, remember, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the Herodians. The third one, the leaven of malice and wickedness. The leaven of malice and wickedness. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 5 verse 6. 1 Corinthians 5 verse 6. This is a very common Bible verse that we read during the days of unleavened bread. Let's begin in verse 6. Your glorifying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Meaning, even if you just let a little sin in your life, it will eventually grow. It starts with the mind. You are tempted. You have this desire. You have this desire to break God's law. And then when you entertain the thought long enough, it will become sin. Diba? The more you think about it, ay, napakasarap kumain you want to eat something that is forbidden, and then the more you think about it, the puffy, very delicious, very soft, unlike the bread of affliction, very hard to bite. Actually, I just ate the hardest bread of affliction during the first day of unleavened bread because it was left in the oven for so long. It's so hard. So I said, this is really the bread of affliction. But anyway, I will not tell you who baked it. But the point here is that the more you think about sin, the more the chances that you're going to commit it. And then it says, and what's worse about this little leavened brethren? It is because it will not only affect you, it will also eventually affect your family, your kids, your wife, your husband, and eventually it will affect the church. That's why in this this letter was given by Paul because the Corinthian brethren they were letting this man, this sexually immoral man, to continue attending with them, and they need to purge it out because eventually, even just a small leaven, it will affect or it will infect the whole congregation. That's why he says here, therefore, purge out the old leaven that you may be a new lump. So you cannot become a new lump if you don't purge out the old leaven. You cannot say na, sige, I will just overcome this sin, pero ito, hindi, mahirap pa ito eh. So, ito lang muna ha, 50% muna, susunod na yun. No, you have to remove completely purge out the old leaven so that you become a new lump. Since, this is very important, since you truly are unleavened. We are already unleavened, brethren. How did that happen, brethren? Remember, the first point that I mentioned, that once you mix the yeast in the dough, it's very difficult or nearly impossible for you to remove that because you cannot see yeast. So, how can we remove that? We cannot remove it by our own. What did the Apostle Paul wrote here? For indeed, how is it possible for us to remove leaven, brethren? For indeed, Christ, our Passover, was sacrificed for us. It was through the sacrifice of Yeshua that we were unleavened. Did you get that point, brethren? So it means that you never ever commit the mistake of thinking that you can overcome sin by yourself. Hindi mo kaya yan. Maybe just a few days, few months, kayang-kaya mo by sheer willpower, by your own determination. But you know what, brethren? You would eventually fail if you're just going to depend on your own strength. That's why, brethren, you need the sacrifice of Yeshua. And verse 8, this is very important. Therefore, let us keep the feast not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness. Now, if you look into the Greek word of malice and wickedness, they are actually related words. The main difference is that malice is more specific. It refers to having an ill will or desire to cause harm to other people. That's malice. Now, in our dialect, we translate that as malicioso. But that is actually not exactly what it means in the Bible. Malicioso is nag-isip ng masama. Malicioso. Alam niyo yan, di ba? Malicioso. It's, you think of bad things. Ay, yan. Ano lang yan. Kaya naman lagi pumupunta yan dyan kasi humuhutot lang ng pera. Pero hindi naman. So that's kind of malicious thinking. So, but in the Bible, malice is actually more of the thinking of ill will of other people. Want to cause them harm. But on the other side, wickedness is actually a broader term that refers to covers a bigger spectrum of immoral conduct. So that is the difference, the leaven of malice and wickedness. Now, this is very important. The Bible tells us that if we want to remove old leaven in our lives, we need to clean our mind where the malice starts. Diyan talaga nangyayari yun sa pag-iisip natin. We remove, we clean our mind and also our actions. Just like when we do spring cleaning, di ba? Normally, when you clean the car, just example lang, when you clean the car, you simply vacuum yung sa baba, yung sa seat, you wipe there. But when it comes to spring cleaning, you have to remove the seat. Baka nandun, merong nakasuksok doon ng mga leaven. You have to remove the spare tire. There might be something hiding there. So, it should be a deeper clean. Diba? In the kitchen, usually you just sweep the floor. But when it comes to spring cleaning, you have to remove the oven, and then you have to clean the lower part. So, every corner of your house, you need to clean. So, you could see here, brethren, that we need to de-leaven ourselves both in our mind and our actions. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 14 verse 20, brethren. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 20. It says, Brethren, do not be children in understanding. However, in malice, be babes. But in understanding, be mature. Ibig sabihin nito is that when you look at the children, di ba? You don't see children or the babies concocting an evil plan. Ganitong gagawin ko. Pagkapot ng alas 6 ng gabi, merong mahuhulog dyan, lalagyan ako trap, di ba? You don't see that, you don't see children concocting evil plans, di ba? That's how you need to be like babes or babies or children in malice. Di ba pag nag-aaway yan, nagkasagutan, nagharutan, they would just simply mag-aaway yan for about just a few minutes, a few hours. Pero mamaya-maya, bati na. They are already playing again. So that's how children are. think of ill will and desire to cause harm to other people. So the Apostle Paul is saying that we need to be like children or babies in malice. Let's go to Ephesians 4, verse 31. What else should we remove, brethren? Ephesians 4:31. Ang bilis ng natin PA. Already there. So let's go to Ephesians 4:31. It says, let all bitterness. These are the things that we would need to remove. So I will just explain. Let all bitterness. What is bitterness, brethren? This is resentment and having unforgiving spirit. Yung di ka talaga makapatawad. Or perhaps makapatawad ka man pero it would take months or years. So that is bitterness. What else? Wrath and anger. That is actually referring to intense and uncontrolled outburst of anger. Yung sometimes we become our anger is so difficult to control. Ang hirap kontrolin. And then it says here, clamor. Clamor is being loud, being disturbing to other people. Lalo na pag you want a good example of clamor? Those people who play the video past 10 p.m. That is clamor. Those people who change their muffler or your tambutso of their motor, that is clamor. Very irritating, very grabe. You might have heard you might have experienced that. That's clamor. We need to remove that in our lives. And evil speaking. What are examples of evil speaking, brethren? Examples of this is slander, gossip, and harmful speech. The things that could harm our brethren. So, those are some of the things that we need to remove in our lives because those are leaven. And finally here, brethren, Yeshua listed some of the things that we need to remove. I forgot to mention. And evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. O, kasama yan. Mark 7. Mark 7 here. Mark 7 verse 20, it says here, and he said, what comes out of a man, that defiles a man, for from within, out of the heart of man, proceed evil thoughts. That's actually malice, brethren. Adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, envy, blasphemy, pride, foolishness, which is lack of wisdom. Those things, now I don't want to go deeper into this, but I want you to reflect on this list. So these are some of the things that we need to remove in our lives. Now finally, brethren, number 4. Number 4 is unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Yan. We've been talking about the leaven. We've been talking about the leaven of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians. We've been talking about the leaven of malice and wickedness. And those things are important things that we need to remove. But it doesn't stop there, brethren. We need to replace it with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. You know why, brethren? Because just like if you want to get healthy, being healthy doesn't stop by just avoiding junk food, soft drinks. Yes, you do that, but if you don't eat nutritious food, you will not become healthy. So that's why, the same manner, if you just stop not eating leaven, it's not complete. It will not help you. So we need to replace it with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. We read here in going back to 1 Corinthians 5. Therefore, verse 8, therefore let us keep the feast not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So, what is sincerity, brethren? Sincerity comes from the Greek word eilekrinia. Eilekrinia, which means sincerity or purity. Now, this is very interesting how the Complete Word Study Dictionary New Testament describe it. Sincerity here means sincere, pure, free from spot or blemish to such a degree as to bear examination in the full splendor of the sun. So he was saying that this sincerity means that kahit even if you will expose it to the sunlight, if you will expose it to the light, you won't see anything that is hidden. So walang tinatago. That is sincerity. Okay? And then on the other hand, the word truth here, the Greek word is aletheia. Aletheia, which means true, pure, real, and genuine. You see, brethren, it's not enough to be just simply sincere. It's not enough to be sincere. You have to couple it with truth. You know why, brethren? Because if you look at the Christian world today, a lot of people are very sincere. Grabe! Bilib na bilib ako. Saludo ako. Nakikita ko sila sa daan. Nagbibigay ng flyers, nagbibigay ng booklets nila. There are people who, especially in Simanang Holy Week, they go to, ang daming simbahan, pinupuntahan. And there are just so many things that they are very sincere. Talagang pag kinakausap mo, talagang they really love God, they really do it. But yet, they don't have the truth. So they are sincerely wrong. That's why you have to have the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Now, this is very important, brethren. How do we move from malice and wickedness to sincerity and truth? How do we move from there, brethren, from point A to point B? The answer, brethren, is here, found in James 1, verse 21. This is the answer. Therefore, lay aside filthiness, that includes malice, and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. In 1 Peter 2, verse 1 to 3, brethren, 1 Peter 2, 1 to 3 says, therefore, laying aside all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking, as newborn babes, desire the pure milk of the word, that you may grow thereby, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is gracious. And then John 17:17, sanctify them with your truth, your word is truth. And finally, Matthew 4, verse 4, but he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So, if you want to purge out malice and wickedness, and you want to grow in sincerity and truth, you have to read the Word. You need to study the Word. And you need to live by the Word. That's how you're going to successfully remove leaven in your life. So, brethren, those are the 4 symbolisms of the days of unleavened bread that I want us to remember on this 4th day of the feast. Brethren, I hope that these things would remind us, would teach us the deep lessons, the spiritual lessons, because it's not enough to simply remove leaven in our lives physically. It's not enough to simply avoid leavening. Hindi. Because this actually symbolizes a deeper lesson. If we simply stop in just removing leaven in our lives, we will not be able to apply the spiritual aspect of these days. So, brethren, we must be reminded of the important message of the days of unleavened bread, which is to remove sin in all its form, in its all shape. We must do our best in living an unleavened life, because truly you are unleavened through the life, death, and sacrifice of our Master, Yeshua. Hello friends, I need your help. If this is not too much to ask, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This should only take 5 seconds of your time, but this simple gesture would help me reach more people and share the Word of God with the rest of the world. You have the power to make a difference in people's lives.